Here's how I made a game that looks like this to this in just 7 days. First, I needed a game idea, and I wanted to make a game like Vampire Survivors. But instead of making an exact copy of the game, I wanted to implement my own unique game mechanic. So after brainstorming for a few hours, I thought of a simple and small change, but it would change the entire playstyle of the game. So the idea came from one of those mini games in Pummel Party where you rob a bank, you gotta cross a road with incoming traffic, and you need to collect the money. But the more you collect, the more heavier you get. So your player's movement speed is slowed down, which makes crossing the road even more dangerous. So it kind of follows a high risk, high reward kind of playstyle, and I want to incorporate that into my game. So how I'm going to do that is, when you kill enemies, they drop XP points. With that, you level up to get your upgrades. But rather than that, they drop gems. You collect those gems and you sell them to the shop, and then you get money to buy your upgrades. So when you collect those gems, you gain weight and your player's movement speed decreases. So that was the basic plan of my game. So with that, we start with day 1. On day 1, I pretty much start like every other game. I created a capsule, wrote a basic script, and now it can move. I then rigged up a Cinemachine virtual camera to follow the player. So now you got a very smooth camera movement along with the player. Then I created a weapon script for the player. So I created the weapon script by following a tutorial by Morby Blakey, and then I created a bullet with just using a white box. And then there we have it. The player can now shoot. The player can now shoot. I then added a temporary background so we can actually tell that the player is moving. Also created a few boundaries so that the camera or the player cannot go past those limits. Okay, now that we have a gun, we don't have anything to shoot at. And since this is a game with like waves of enemies just spawning, next order of business is to create a wave system. So the thing is, I have no idea on how to create a wave system. So when I searched on YouTube, I found a great video by that one Unity dev. It's pretty awesome, you guys should go check it out. So after using his code and making a few changes, I created a wave generator where each wave, it spawns more and more enemies. I also changed the player sprite to a potato because, it's funny. You're a potato. By now, after fixing a lot of bugs and issues with the game, my brain was totally fried. I did not want to code anymore, but I still wanted to make a little more progress in my game. So I thought of making my level design. So after searching a lot in itch.io, I finally found an asset pack that I'd like, created by, I think the name's pronounced Swanhild, I don't know. And these assets really do help because I have no skill in designing whatsoever. So downloaded that, imported it into Unity, and created a tile palette and started painting my game. Yeah, so I created like boundaries for the game with the fence style set you get, and I created few trees and bushes around the area and inside the area to make them like obstacles, and a house in the middle to serve as a shop. Over there you can sell your gems and buy your upgrade. Okay, day 2. I thought of changing my enemy sprites to another asset pack which I found on itch.io by RGS Dev. I've also made a bullet script so that the bullet can do damage to the enemies and the bullet destroys on impact. Okay, that was a mistake. The bullet only damages the enemies and the bullet gets destroyed on impact. Then I thought it was time to start implementing my game mechanic. So I created 2 gems, a blue one and a red one. I made it so that there's a probability chance when you kill enemies. So there's a chance of getting a blue one or a red gem, or you might get nothing at all. Also now enemies can do damage to the player. And before ending day 2, I was thinking of making one more enemy type before leaving. On day 3, I added a state-driven camera system. So the camera zooms out when the player moves and zooms in when the player is idle. Also gave the trees a cool breathing effect, so it kind of looks like the trees are alive in the game rather than it being static. Then I implemented the system where you can pick up the gems and it slows you down, and when you get close enough to the shop, the gems are sold. and you get your speed back. I also gave the players the option to drop their gems just in case if they're in a tight spot. But be in mind, if you drop the gems, you won't get them back. Also, I made the gems despawn after like 20 seconds. And just like day 2 before ending day 3, I was thinking of adding one more enemy type. This guy is small and he can fly. And I've set him up in a way that he's a bit faster than the player. All the other enemies are a bit slower than the player, so when the player picks up the gems is when they match the speed of the enemies. But this guy is the opposite, so these guys are a bit annoying. Even without carrying gems, they'll be able to reach you. On day 4, I wanted to give a death animation rather than the enemies just disappearing. Luckily, the asset pack came with a death animation. So quickly made that into a Unity animation and made a state to play it when the enemy dies. And then there you have it. You now have a cloud following you when you kill the enemies. Okay, fixed that and went straight on ahead, created another enemy, and the lineup was complete. I also made a health pack for heals because every good game needs a good healing system. So after I was done with that, I started working on the gun, and I've made 3 of them. You've got a pistol that's like a medium range with a slow fire rate. Then you've got an AR with a long range and a faster fire rate, and a shotgun, my personal favorite. It's got a slow firing rate, but it shoots 3 bullets at once, and it is pretty satisfying when you get a multi-kill with it. Okay, now it's day 5, so I started working on the UI elements. All my UI elements are made by the UI Basic Asset Pack by Benzilla. On the top left, I've created 2 bars so that the player can know how much their health is and what is their weight limit. After playtesting my game a bunch of times, I knew something was missing. We needed a boss fight, so I made a boss spawner system where at every 10th wave, that is wave 10, wave 20, 30, 40, etc., a boss appears. After I was done with that, I was pretty happy with the progress I've made on day 5. On day 6, I worked on the upgrade system. I created a script and I also created a UI for the shop. So whenever you enter the shop and you interact with it, the shop's UI system comes up and you can do your basic upgrade. You can increase your max health or your move speed or your weapon damage, or you can increase your weight limit so you can carry more gems. I wasn't able to do much on day 6 as I had plans, but it was fine because I made enough progress for me to take a little break. And finally on day 7, I added a few more UI text, one showing that the wave is preparing or the current wave you're on, and on the right side you've got your score text and the text that shows how much money you've got. I've also added a game over UI text box, so when the player dies, you have the option to either leave the game or to restart the level. I've also added a boss at wave 20 and wave 30, and yes, I've made sure that the spawn boss would always be on top so you won't get this bug. Finally, every game needs a soundtrack and sound effects. So after searching around the net, I got a few sound effects and soundtracks to make my game come alive. And finally, the result. All in all, this was a fun experience and really happy on how the game turned out. Might plan to release the game so all of you guys can try it out too. But of course, would have to polish this a bit more and maybe add in like a few more things, like maybe a flamethrower or something. I don't know. You guys can also give your suggestions on how I can make this game better. And if I do plan on releasing it, I'm thinking it should have like a multiplayer versus mode. I don't know, I think that would make this game a bit more fun. Yeah, so that's all I've got. Thanks for watching, and I guess I'll see you later.